June 4th, 2025. We've had some recent developments here in the Russia-Ukraine war that are kind of interesting and have got a lot of notoriety lately. That I guess that first of all, we did have the Istanbul meeting between the Russians and the Ukrainians, which had been kind of demanded by the Trump administration, I guess, and sort of proposed by the Russians, and the Ukrainians kind of agreed, and both of them basically stayed at their negotiating positions, which haven't been that much changed from previous versions. Uh, so it looks like that no great progress has been made, although I think there's going to be some another issues on it, particularly the exchange of bodies of the dead or something that each have and things of that sort. But it doesn't seem like that the progress that at least the Trump administration was looking for has occurred. And of course, sort of hanging over this in the background is this congressional effort, particularly in the Senate, to put these gigantic sanctions on any country that buys oil and other energy products from Russia. So we'll have to see how that all plays out. But in the meantime, right before this meeting occurred, the Ukrainians pulled off another one of their what I call sucker punch attacks. Um, which Russia does seem to be a sucker for the punch occasionally. And what they managed to do was to get a bunch of trucks with drones in them, and apparently this has been being built. This has only been built up and planned for something like 18 months. And I do suspect behind this may be the British. That's it sounds like a classic British SAS kind of thing. But anyhow, they they basically had these trucks with these drones and the kind of the ceilings of these things, and they were driven to various locations very close to various strategic bomber bases from the Russian Air Force, and they unleashed these things, I guess, with remote control, and flew over and attempt to destroy as many of the Russian bomber force as possible. Now, the initial claims were fairly large that they'd destroyed something like 40 bombers. Um, However, it's beginning to appear to me at this time. This is one reason why I waited to comment on this, is to kind of see how it filtered out. I think at this point it looks like they didn't get that many. I would tend to think that the numbers are probably somewhere I think maybe between 7 and maybe 13. The exact number is unclear, but apparently two bases were fairly heavily hit. The others apparently didn't turn off so good. Perhaps because the base themselves had some electronic warfare to jam signals, or other factors. One thing that did occur, at least in one or more cases, civilians saw what was happening and attacked the truck that was going to be launching these drones. So I don't know. Obviously, the details are muddled in the propaganda of both sides, but at any rate, several aircraft were destroyed. Let's put it that way, but probably not enough to really have a major impact on the conduct of the war going forward. So, at any rate, but this has become a kind of a propaganda push, and apparently also has a lot of the Russians, of course, are sort of embarrassed by this thing, I would say. And do they have anybody to blame but themselves, really, for letting this happen? Might get a little bit more in that detail later. In addition, there were also a couple of attacks on some bridges, which could be key to logistics of the offensive in the area, I believe, of Belgorod area, south of that, into Ukraine. So, at any rate, if you like these videos, please give me a like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications, or you can follow me at the address that's listed in the description below on Rumble. So that's kind of the size of the thing, and of course, there's a lot of recriminations here. The Trump administration has denied any knowledge that this attack was going to come, and there were a phone call between the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov and our Secretary of State Rubio over the subject. The other issue was the attack, which didn't destroy or derail a military train with munitions, but actually was a civilian train, and apparently seven people were killed and several injured. Um, and so and that was kind of considered a bit of a terroristic attack. And then to top it all off, of course, right after this, there was a more recently there was a bombing of the bridge which connecting Russia to Crimea. So that's however, it appears that the bridge remained standing after the explosion, which leaves us kind of wondering what exactly happened there either. Um, so anyway, that's kind of the state of play on that. And so far, there's been, as of this recording, and I don't know what may happen by the time some of you see this, there's not been no serious Russian response to it yet. So we'll have to kind of see whether this is because they're spending their time figuring out just what deed to do, or is it negotiations of that having a quieting effect. It's hard to know exactly at this point. We'll see what transpires. Um, the so one thing that's been thrown out, and when I say that I think the Russians sort of have this to blame, I mean this thing of having very valuable aircraft left out in the open. Given the history of Ukrainian drone attacks on air bases and other targets, such as oil refineries, ammo dumps, and anti-aircraft systems, and all sort of things. Um, but I mean, high-value targets that could be attacked by really cheap drones. I mean, these weren't the long-range, expensive drones. These are just your basically, uh, you know, point of view drones. Little model drones with explosives on them. So that's and of course this is. I mean, why haven't they built some kind of even minimal shelters for these aircraft to protect them? Now, one thing that's floating around a lot, which I've spent some time researching, is that this so-called the Strategic Arms Treaty that was signed in I guess so it was 2010 or 11, that period. It's being stated that this arms reduction treaty required these planes to be out in the open with no cover. Well, then immediately I thought that don't sound right, because I know we have protective shelters for our B-2 bombers, which were covered by the treaty, and that's for environmental protection of their sensitive stealth coatings. And so I was like, well, if we can do it for our bombers, why can't they? And the fact is, the research I've done indicates that those reports from people that otherwise should be credible people, who should know more about it than me, including General Flynn, of all people. Um, but my research has pretty much concluded that, in fact, that's not the case. And it's a misunderstanding at best. What they're referring to is a provision in the treaty that as you reduce strategic nuclear delivery systems, which should either be, missiles or ICBMs, SLBMs, or strategic long-range bombers, if you reduce those numbers, if you want to take one off the list, it has to be destroyed in a way visible to national technical means, i.e., spy satellites, and then left there for, I think, a period of something like 60 days or something to verify that it was in fact destroyed and taken out of the inventory. And that is not for operational bombers that are actually available for use. So anyway, so that's kind of gives you an idea of the that's wrong, what was stated. But so the Russians could have actually put protective shelters over them. Perhaps they felt the threat wasn't that much. Although it's interesting that even in the video we saw of the attack, they did have the notorious tires on the wings. I don't know how much protection tires are, but at any rate, I would suggest something a little more formal in the future. Um, and the other thing is kind of interesting. If in fact those two bridges that were destroyed in the northern sector there, um, if those bridges were actually likely to be used for offensive logistics in that area, one would tend to think you would be guarding the bridges a little bit against some commandos coming in and planting explosive charges to blow them up. I mean, what would it take? A squad or something to do that? And if the squad was ambushed and destroyed, the fact it would quit reporting would be a key signal to send in reinforcements and make sure the thing was okay. So and that so at any rate, this is what happened, and it gives them a little kudos. I think that even was it Wall Street Journal claimed that the Ukraine can still win the war. I doubt that it will have that big of an effect on it. However, the other thing, the bridge to Crimea, that is an interesting case because the explosion apparently didn't bring down the bridge. It was ballyhooed by the Ukrainians. It apparently was it might have done some damage, which maybe will weaken it and mean that heavy loads like the train maybe won't be suited. I don't know. That's hard to know whether that how much significance is, but it was still standing after the explosion and didn't seem to be that damaged. I have a wild possibility, which I'll throw out briefly. Perhaps the Russians have started doing some more looking for this sort of thing after the two bridge attacks in the northern area, and they decided that to look around, and maybe the Ukrainians had found out the Russians had discovered them, they're planting explosives before they were done, and the Ukrainians seeing that it was only a short time that the Russians would then be removing the explosives, they went ahead and detonated just to do what damage they could with what they had. That's a possibility, or I don't know. It's also unclear how they were even able to get that far. We would think you'd be watching these things, but anyhow, our Russians are kind of that way, are they not? Anyhow, it is. I guess it's a feather in the hat for the Ukrainians for the moment. Although it probably won't change much because the ground war seems to continue to be moving in the Russian favor, particularly right now in the Sunni direction. Um, it seems like every time the Ukrainians scramble their elite forces to an area to block a Russian advance, the Russians simply start advancing in the area that they scurried away from. So anyway, that's kind of the way that is, and I just thought it'd be interesting to go through all this, and we'll see what happens next, and exactly what the U.S. does next, and what the outcome will be. On other issues, I noticed that they caught some couple of Chinese bringing in a fungus or something that would be very bad for agriculture. It might cause a major crops crops to be destroyed and things of that sort, and presumably could also harm the people that ate crops who were infected with it. So, and that these people have gotten caught and arrested, I guess, in the so anyway, another Chinese effort. Um, and we're continuing to monitor, what's going to happen on the tariff issue. Apparently, Trump has kind of laid down an ultimatum that was about a week to everybody present their best offer on a trade deal. So I guess they're trying to get things going. And finally, before I close this up, I want to make a question about this Elon Musk latest thing, and also a lot of these a few key conservatives. And at least one libertarian, as objections to the bill that was passed from the House. I would point out to these individuals that, in fact, that bill was passed by narrowly with one vote margin. Okay, so the House is doing the best it can from the point of view of the membership we have. I mean, sure, I think the bulk of a lot of people would be willing to do deeper cuts, but if they can't pass, the plan is useless. So Elon should, I mean, he may be a great technologist, but apparently he's a bit of a novice at politics. Because I don't think attacking your own people in a situation, now the Democrats are trying to seize on this, but of course this is absurd because what Elon wants to do is much deeper cuts than's in the House bill. Um, so I mean, they're being very hypocritical as usual, trying to say that in any way supports their viewpoint. So anyhow, I mean, obviously, one would like to control spending better, but it's more important to control it somewhat than rather than have the bill fail, have taxes go up, and actually have another continuing resolution of an existing Biden era budget to be the result. That's not what we really want to have happen here. Okay. So anyway, so that's kind of the state of play right now. So I'll be posting this as always on YouTube and Rumble, and of course the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. So all for now.